Hi all, I welcome you all to the next lecture today. My intention is to cover only three topics. One, I will be putting relationship for A dot, that is for two-dimensional airfoil, and A, right, lift curve slope for the finite wing, right, or you can say symmetrical airfoil, and this is for unsymmetrical airfoil, cambered airfoil. This is for symmetric airfoil. So we will start from this relationship. Then we'll go to see the flow behavior over the cylinder, right? Then we'll see the flow behavior of air on the airfoil, and we will finish our discussion with the derivation of lift and drag using dimensional analysis. So let's start our discussion today. In previous lecture, we have covered all the relevant, definitions of Mach number, critical Mach number, drag dimension Mach number. Also, you have given an exposure about how to relate symmetric airfoil with the cambered airfoil. And today we are going to drive basically interrelationship between lift curve slopes, how actually things varies. So if we look at this one, this is the case of symmetric airfoil, in which symmetric airfoil chord line and mean camber line coincide. So we can consider this as chord line, right? Usually. So the angle between the chord line and the relative wind, this is the relative wind, is known as angle of attack. Already we have defined. So as in the case of symmetric airfoil, there is no inbuilt induced angle, or you can say the zero lift angle of attack. So our CL and variation with alpha, if we look at, it will be starting from zero. This position is zero, right, and goes up to certain angle of attack. Then after that, stalling happens. Stalling, then there's a loss of lift. So if we look at the lift curve behavior, it will be almost linear up to certain angle, that is called stalling angle, and immediately after that fluctuations will come and your lift will decrease. So alpha effective is nothing but alpha only. So if you are writing CL value from this, you can write CL is equal to A into alpha. Very simple equation you will be getting, and you can calculate the coefficient of lift. That's the case of symmetric airfoil. If you go to the camber airfoil, in camber airfoil, there will be a difference between mean camber line and chord lines. The chord line is will know where at the middle section of the airfoil. So usually, if we compare with this, alpha is alpha, but now effective angle is getting reduced because camber means what we say, because of camber, your chord line got shifted, and the angle between chord line and relative wind will be called the effective angle, right? So effective angle will be somewhere in between. So when we are going to find out the effective angle, that will be nothing but this alpha that was ordinary, it was there, right? Alpha minus whatever has been induced, that is called induced angle due to the zero lift angle of attack. So alpha minus alpha I will be now effective angle of attack. So this is the angle of attack which is effective for generating the lift in the case of cambered airfoil. But in symmetric airfoil, whatever alpha was, that was responsible for creating the lift. So in this case, we can write the CL is equal to A into alpha effective, right? Where this alpha I basically is having an empirical relation with CL, which is given as CL upon pi EAR, right? This is the actually empirical relation. A lot of experimentations have been done, and finally they finalize that the alpha E is nothing but CL upon pi E. AR, where E and AR, E is Oswald efficiency factor, already got introduced to you in previous lecture. Value will be between 0.85 to 1, and this is aspect ratio. So CL upon pi AR is alpha I. So alpha effective. Now in this case, if you are writing CL, that will be nothing but CL is equal to A into alpha effective. So alpha effective will have both those terms, right? Alpha minus alpha I, right? Alpha minus alpha I. So if I relate this and this, right, both together, I can relate with the help of alpha effective, right? So if I want to write alpha or just simply alpha, so if I want to write alpha, that will be CL upon A. If I'm writing for this, and second term will come CL upon pi EAR, right? This is also equal to CLY A naught, because here from here alpha is CLY A naught, basically this is A naught. So alpha is equal to CLY A naught from this equation, and from here it will CLY A minus this term. So if you look at, if you compare this, I can say 1 by A naught is equal to 1 by A minus 1 upon pi E A R. Alright. So from here, you can write 1 by A is equal to 1 by A naught plus 1 upon pi E A R. Right. If you do so, what will happen? You just take LCM and solve this. You will get the relation A is equal to A naught upon 1 plus A naught upon pi E A R. This relation you will get out of this. Right. If you solve this. And this actually solution was basically proposed by the Galois. So Galois was the scientist actually who derived this expression and gave this expression of relations between A and A naught in this way. So based on this, basically we will see some problems. I think so. We have solved almost one problem over this, right? We can see one more problem in a similar way. So is that clear? So as I said, this is symmetrical airfoil. Symmetrical airfoil CL is equal to A naught alpha. So there should not be any doubt. And this is unsymmetrical. In that case, the effective angle of attack will decrease compared to this. Right. So effective angle of attack now is alpha minus alpha I. Alpha I is basically we say zero left angle of attack, or sometimes we say induced angle of attack. So it is induced angle of attack is having empirical relation with CL, that is CL upon pi AR. So if you substitute this, you can get CL is equal to A alpha effective. Then we can compare based on this alpha, because alpha is common in both, right? So alpha is equal to CL by A naught, here CL by A minus this term, right? Basically this is a itself is negative positive, because alpha is negative. So when you substitute here, it will be again become positive. When you are taking this that side, it will become negative. This term will become negative. So that's why this negative term is coming, CL upon pi AR. So this alpha is equal to CL by A naught, which we have got from here. Then you equate this, right? If you equate, get this term this side, and finally you can write the equation, right, in this way. So this basically is known as aspect ratio correction, or you can say the lift curve slope correction, right, proposed by the Galois. Galois gave this relation. So A is equal to A naught divided by 1 plus A naught upon pi r, where A naught is basically by experimentation they already fixed the value of A naught. That is nothing but A naught is equal to 2 pi per radian. Per radian. So this value is already fixed. They have done the experiment and they have found out that A naught value will not vary beyond this. So A naught is already fixed. Only variable is A. So A can be calculated by using this relation. So this is the relationship between A and A naught. Easily you can find it out. So based on this, some problems we'll discuss later on. Already I gave you one exposure of one problem, and one more problem I will give you as a homework, right? So that you can try with. Alright, so that is basically I have taken from the John D. Anderson unsolved numerical problem. So try with using the same formula. So let's go to the next discussion, that is flow over a circular cylinder. So flow over a circular cylinder. So whenever aerodynamics start with very simple geometry, that is called circular cylinder, and two cases we will see. One is circular cylinder is stationary and flow is moving. Another one, circular cylinder is rotating and flow is moving. So both the scenario we will see. First scenario is just simply one circular cylinder is there, this kind of circular cylinder which is not rotating. So if it is not rotating, flow is coming from this side, right, and will be traveling over entire surface, and then finally it will be leaving the surface. So this kind of geometry you will be getting. All right. So if we look at, the one line will come here and another will strike from here and go out. So whenever flow is taking place, right, it will have 2 points over which flow attachment and detachment will happen. One flow is getting attached here, it is getting detached somewhere here, right? So it is diametrically opposite, right? Stagnation. So The point where flow comes to rest, right? It is one stagnation point if I say S1, and this is the where flow again detached and flow velocity is becoming zero here. This is called second stagnation point. So any object which is moving through air will have two stagnation point. One stagnation point where flow is getting attached, and second stagnation point where flow is getting detached. The moment flow is getting detached means velocity is almost zero. So in the case of circular cylinder without circulation, this is not rotating stationary cylinder, right? Stationary cylinder. So in the case of stationary cylinder, your stagnation point will be lying diametrically opposite. One will be at front side, another will be at back side, and flow will be almost this kind of uniform flow you will be getting around the periphery. So wake formation will definitely will be there, but wake formation area is only this much where wake formation is taking place. That's the one thing, right? So take the second case when the circular cylinder is rotating, right, spinning. What will be the case? So I am considering now the circular cylinder is basically spinning with some circulation. I have given some initial circulation denoted by gamma. So it is rotating like this and flow is coming like this. When flow is coming like this, what will happen? So the moment flow is coming, one stagnation point, it will try to strike here. It is striked here. Now flow is going like that, right, and leaving like this. Similarly, here flow is coming like that, leaving like this. Right, so if you look at the flow geometry, it got distorted. It got distorted. Second stagnation point, if you look at it is going like this, another is going like this. So if I say this is the second stagnation point, S2, this is S1. So due to this, what happened basically? You look at this here, pressure distribution, if you want to draw, it will be symmetrical. No, front is also same, bottom also is symmetrical pressure distribution getting. When you are getting symmetrical pressure distribution, lift will not be there because same pressure will be on top, same pressure at bottom, and front and back also same pressure will be there. So when everything is same, like lift is zero, drag is also zero, right? That is the case in a first case. And we are assuming ideal flow condition. We are not dealing with the real flow, ideal flow condition. Now second case, when circulation has been introduced, when circulation has been introduced, your stagnation points have moved. Right now they are not at diametrically opposite, they have moved, right. Front has gone down and that has also gone down, and because of that, now pressure distribution is unsymmetrical. You look at here, pressure distribution is more, here is less. So in that case, what will happen? There will be unbalanced, force acting on the cylinder, due to which cylinder will, what will happen? Cylinder will lift off. So in this case, lift is not equal to zero, right? In this case, when cylinder is rotating, right? This is a rotating cylinder, rotating cylinder. In the case of rotating cylinder, now lift is not zero, but as we have made an assumption that it is an ideal flow, so ideal flow will not have viscosity. So when it is not having viscosity, means it is not creating any kind of resistance. When it's not creating any kind of resistance, your drag still is zero. Drag is zero, right? Basically here. So compare these two. Whenever we are imparting a circulation, right, in the system, and circulation basically what is it doing? It is basically disturbing the pressure distribution, and it makes the pressure distribution unsymmetrical. When pressure distribution is going to be unsymmetrical, there will be unbalanced force acting over the object, due to which you will get a normal reaction or call lift, right. But in first case, there was no circulation, so pressure distribution almost symmetrical. Because of that, there was no lift. So one thing is clear from this picture: whenever any object is facing the flow, it will have two stagnation point. One, the wire flow is getting attached, and another is wire flow is getting detached. And based on that relative motion of the stagnation point, your pressure distribution will also be varying, right. And we need unsymmetrical pressure distribution if you want to generate a lift. So that's the one thing. So that will happen in this case. So one thing is your lift is due to the circulation basically. That's what one observation. My intention was to give you an exposure about that. The lift is basically due to circulation. The moment you are introducing the circulation in the system, there will be generation of lift. Here also some pressure difference was there. Because of pressure difference, only pressure distribution was taking place, but that was not sufficient to give you the net lift. That's the one thing. This is clear, right? Now we'll go to the F-oil. This is the one thing for circular cylinder. So if we look at the airfoil and we are keeping airfoil at a certain angle, if we are keeping just like this is an airfoil and flow is coming from this side, will strike over here. So I got first stagnation point here and second point exactly here. Alright, so flow will be almost attached, right, finally detaching here. So I will be getting this kind of pattern. Alright, so it's a very smooth pressure distribution I will be getting over that. Alright, so this is the one case. If I am changing the angle now, this was at 0 degree, now I am changing the angle. So if I change the angle like this, now situation will be entirely different, right? By changing the angle, what I am doing, I am creating a disturbance to the flow, and I am creating disturbance to the flow, it will induce the circulation in the system. So now you look at the scenario. Now scenario will be something like this. This is S1 and now flow has gone right like this and got separated from here. So this is S2. So flow behavior something like this, and from here it is getting separated. From here also it is going like this. So if you look at the pattern, right, in which flow is going here, this thing, lot of vertex will be forming, that is called wake. Weak region is more now because the rear stagnation point has moved, right. Rear stagnation point has moved this direction. Because of that, wake formation take place. What is basically this wake? Wake is nothing but turbulence region. This is a turbulence region because flow has separated, and because of that turbulency has introduced in the system. This is a turbulence region behind the body, right, is called wake. Because of that, negative pressure will be acting in the backside, which will basically what will then, which will try to pull your object back. That means it will create the resistance to the object. So this is one sort of resistance. Because of that, wake, there will be a downward induced velocity, right, that will basically introduce the induced drag in the system. The moment induced drag is coming into the picture, right, it will create larger amount of losses, right. As I clearly mentioned, in total drag 85% contribution comes from basically this wake drag. This need to be minimized, right. So here also we have seen stagnation points, right, moves relatively when we are changing the angle of attack. So the moment you are changing the angle of attack, stagnation point will move. So rear stagnation point is moving up. So it will keep on moving, right. If you are reaching nearby stalling angle of attack, at that time what will happen? The rear stagnation point will be somewhere near leading edge. That if that is going to be happen, your flow will separate from the leading edge immediately after the leading edge, and you will have a larger area of separated flow and will not be able to generate sufficient lift. Right, so drag will be more. So this thing, based on this, visualization of flow, you can identify how to minimize this wake by making the movement of stagnation point. How you can do that? By streamlining the body or by changing the shape or do some slight modifications to the system, and you can easily come up with the well designed optimized shape to provide larger lift, right. This is the one thing I clearly mentioned, how stagnation points are moving over the airfoil, how on the circular cylinder. So if you compare this wake for circular cylinder case, wake will be more because this overall thickness, that is called diameter, is bigger compared to this. So thickness is less will be the wake, because in that case what will happen, length we have increased. Because of length, what will happen is skin friction drag will increase but pressure drag will decrease, or you can say induced drag will decrease. Skin friction drag is having very less contribution in the total drag, maybe 1 to 2%, right, but induced drag is having 85% contribution in the total drag. That need to be minimized, right. And because of that, what we are doing, we don't need larger frontal area, right. We need to make streamlined, fully streamlined it on to avoid the sharp corners. We used to provide the curved fillet kind of structures, right, in the all the vehicles which are exposed to the atmosphere. So in the airfoil, length is more, the skin friction drag will be more, but pressure drag will be less. That's our man motto, right, of doing the streamlining. That's the regarding the airfoil. Let's go for the next topic, that is called last topic for today. Uh, Derivation for aerodynamic force, aerodynamic force using dimensional analysis. Dimensional analysis. So I will be using very simple dimensional analysis. Alright, I'm not going in that much detail. So whenever any object is moving through air, right, the force exerted by the domain, right, fluid domain depends on fluid viscosity, fluid velocity, right, length of the object, the geometrical dimension, sorry. So length of the object as well as Reynolds number by which shear flow is traveling. So Reynolds number depends on kinematic viscosity, right? As well as the pressure. The pressure comes from the bulk modulus. By every fluid having its own bulk modulus, so that we say compressibility. That compressibility is inversely proportional to the bulk modulus. We usually we connect in that way. So bulk modulus. So there are five factors. Properties of fluid is viscosity can be considered, bulk modulus, kinetic viscosity, right, and density, length of the object, speed of object if object is moving and this model is means your domain is stationary. If your domain is moving, then take the speed of the domain. So there are total if you look at, there are five parameters: density of fluid, velocity of fluid, length of the object, kinematic viscosity of the object, sorry, fluid, and bulk modulus of the fluid. So I can say the aerodynamic force if I am representing by F, right? This aerodynamic force, if I am represented by F, I can say F is directly proportional to density, velocity, length, kinematic viscosity, right, and bulk modulus. So these are the five factors. So now kinematic viscosity already you might have gone through your fluid mechanics first chapter, properties of fluid. Kinematic viscosity is nothing but it is the ratio of dynamic viscosity to the density, right? Mu by rho we usually say, and unit will be in centimeter square per second or meter square per second. And bulk modulus talks about how much compressive stresses are acting due to and why what is happening the compressive strength. So it is dp by dv by v is called bulk modulus. So pressure will decrease and volume volume will expand, or pressure will increase and volume will decrease. That's the one thing. So that's the bulk modulus. So if I remove this proportionality, I will get a constant. So if I say constant is k is already I am using. So some constant, if I say c is my constant, into rho into v into L into nu into k. This is equation number 2. So if I want to find out the relationship, I need to give some notation to this. I will say rho to the power a, b to the power b, L to the power c. This is d and this is e, and this is a constant. So constant will not have any dimensions, right? So writing the dimension on both sides. So dimension means length is represented by L, mass is represented by m, and time is represented by t, right? So if we do so, right, if we do so, so for the force is nothing but pressure by area, right? So pressure Newton per meter square, right, by into area will give the force. So if you are going to do so, I can write for force dimension, right, like ml t minus 2. This is for force this side, and this constant is nothing but m0, L0, T0. Constant is constant into density kilogram per meter cube, right? M L minus 3, right? This is A. Velocity meter per second, LT minus 1, right? B into length is L, C into kinetic viscosity meter square per second or centimeter square per second. So L square T minus 1, right? L square T minus 1. This is my D into bulk modulus. Again, this is dp by db by b. So db by b is strain. Strain will not have any meanings. Only pressure. Whatever dimension of pressure is there, that you can put. So the bulk modulus is ml minus 1, ml minus 1, t minus 2. So this is E. Now, what are the properties which will be dominating basically on the aerodynamic forces? That we need to first identify, and we will express all these constant values a, b, c in terms of those parameters. So whenever any object is moving through the fluid, right, fluid viscosity dominates a lot, right? So viscosity term is coming where in kinematic viscosity, one thing, Another, the fluid pressure, right? A fluid will exert a pressure that will also dominating a lot on the aerodynamic forces. And while the pressure term is coming in bulk modulus. So we are having two important properties, right, which will be dominating over the aerodynamic forces. So we need to express everything in terms of those two properties, and those two properties are having power D and E. So we have to express A, B, C in terms of D and E, and then finally we'll substitute in the equation number 2 and we relate, right? We'll relate. So how to do so? Just equate the powers of MLT, right? So when we are equating the powers of M, right, I can write 1 is equal to, here is 1, here is A, and here is just simply E. One term I got here. If I am equating L, right, so L is 1 here again is equal to minus 3A, right, plus B plus C plus 2D minus E. If I am equating T, T is minus 2 is equal to here minus B, right, minus D, right, minus 2 times of E. So I got these three equations and I need to solve these three equations to express A, B, C in terms of D and E. Clear? So from this equation, right, from first equation, I can say A is equal to 1 minus E. One thing I got, right? That's the one thing over. And here already, B can be written in terms of, simply from this I am writing B is equal to, take B from this side and 2 minus D minus 2 times of E. So B also known to you, right, in terms of D and E. Now substitute these A and B here to get C, right? If you substitute A and B here to get C, right, you can get C from here. Just substitute, I will give you direct value of C. This is coming as 2 minus D, right? This is 2 minus D which is coming. So I got all the values of A, B, C, right? Now I will substitute back these values here, right? So I am substituting now. So if you substitute this, you will get F is equal to C into rho to the power A is A means 1 minus E into V to power V, that is 2 minus D minus 2E, into L to the power C, that is 2 minus G, alright, into nu to the power D into K to the power E. Very simple. Now you expand this. This is E basically. This is not a row. Don't get confused between that. So now you expand this. So we are expanding this. You can write F is equal to rho V square L square. This is one term. Rho V square L square into nu. Nu is here, right? Nu divided by D. You look at how many D are there. V, right, VL and nu, one term you got, and here K, E, you look at E, this is rho E, rho V square. So this you got, these two terms you got, and one constant is also there, so constant you can put here, right? So if you look at this is rho VLY mu, right? If you look at the Reynolds number is rho VLY mu, and this can be written as VL divided by mu by rho, and mu by rho is nu. So nu by VL is Reynolds number, and this is basically a Mach number, right? That you will come to know. So from here we can say F is equal to rho V square L square is a function of Reynolds number and Mach number, right? Function of Reynolds number and Mach number. This is Reynolds number, this is the Mach number. Alright. So this relation I got where phi Reynolds number Mach number is nothing but CR divided by 2. This is empirical relation. Not ask for derivation for this. So Reynolds number and Mach number is nothing but coefficient of resultant aerodynamic force divided by 2. If you substitute this here, you can get F is equal to half rho V square L square into CR. This is the one relation, right? This is the one relation. Now let's suppose this is a just rectangular or cross sectional area is L into L. So L into L can be considered as area, right? Area is equal to L into L, right? So if you consider that, you can write this expression like, so F became half rho B square area into CR, right? CR is the coefficient of resultant aerodynamic force. So the moment I know this, as I said that aerodynamic force is a function of RE and ME, so CL will also be a function of RE and ME, right? ME, right? As CD, drag will also be a function of RE and ME because these both depends on the aerodynamic force. So similarly, for as I written for this resultant aerodynamic force, some equation CL and CD can also be written in a similar way. So I can write lift is equal to half rho B square A into CL coefficient of lift, and drag is also a function of half rho B square A into CD coefficient of drag. So similarly, I can write a relationship for lift and drag as well. This is the resultant aerodynamic force, right? Resultant aerodynamic force. So like that, you can derive expression for the aerodynamic forces using the dimensional analysis. Very simple way, right? L square, so L into L is the area. So half rho B square A into CL. A is the area. Area is planform area looking from the top. So like that, you can derive expression. So this much is enough for today. I think so. 31 minutes. So one problem I will solve. That's all. And with that, I will closing today's discussion. So take the problem one is a very simple problem. Hardly 1 minute is enough to solve this problem. So an aircraft of an airfoil of chord length 2 meter and span 15 meter has an angle of attack 6 degree. Full stop. The airfoil is moving with a velocity of 80 meter per second in an air whose density is 1.25 kilogram per meter cube. Determine weight of the airfoil and power required to accelerate the airfoil, given that coefficient of drag is equal to 0.03 and coefficient of lift is equal to 0.5, right? So this is the problem. So what all things are given? Given chord length is given 2 meter, span is given 15 meter, angle of attack is given 6 degree, right? Moving with velocity 80 meter per second, right? Determine the weight. Density is also given 1.25 kilogram per meter cube. We need to find out the weight and power required, and CD is equal to 0.03 and CL is equal to 0.5. This is given. So airfoil is traveling. So we need to assume one assumption: airfoil is traveling horizontal, right? Steady horizontal flight. On a steady horizontal flight, lift will be equal to the weight. So the first thing what is asking, weight of airfoil is equal to lift is equal to half rho V square area into CL. And area you can calculate from here. So area is equal to B into C. That is means 30 meter square, right? B into C is given area. So you can substitute here half rho B and 30 into CL is given 0.5. So you can get directly weight of the file in this way, that is coming around 60 kilonewton, right? So weight is 60 kilonewton. So this is the one answer, first answer. Second is asking power required. Power, why are you requiring power? Be requiring power to counter the air resistance, right? That's why. So we need to first know what is the drag. Then we can go for power required. So this is one case. Next one, part B. So drag is equal to half rho B square area into CD. So similar, half 1.25 80 square area 30 into CD 0.03, find it out. So power required will be nothing but drag force into velocity divided by 1000 in kilowatt. So drag force is coming 3.6 kilonewton. If you substitute here, right, drag into velocity 80 and divided by 1000, power required is coming at 288. kilowatt. So this is the answer for this problem. This is the answer for this problem. So like that you can solve the problem, right? Any sort of problem comes on this concept, you can deal with very simple formula that you need to apply. So with this I'm closing the today discussion, right? Next class when we will returning back, we will see some more problems on running forces, and I will conclude the second unit of introduction to aerospace engineering. So thanks for your patience. Have a nice day. Good day.